The season had barely ended, and the silence in the hallways of the Chase Center wasn't one of peace, but of tension. In the players' eyes, especially in the one who had always been the soul and battle cry of the team, there was still the weight of elimination. The bitter taste of recent defeat mingled with a growing unease behind the scenes. It was as if something was coming, something big. Far from microphones and cameras, while the city of San Francisco tried to reconnect with life beyond basketball, a call was made. A conversation laced with veiled promises, still living memories, and ambitions that hadn't been buried. A name began to circulate strongly once more within the walls of the front office, that of a former hero, someone who had once worn those colors and, with them, written immortal chapters: Kevin Durant. Yes, as unlikely as it seemed, the Golden State Warriors seriously considered bringing back the one who, between 2016 and 2019, had been more than a star. He had been a beacon, a decision-making machine in the moments that forge legends. The discussions took place quietly. No tweets, no leaks, no clear hints, just silence, until rumors began to leak out among the most attentive reporters. Durant, however, wasn't ready. Not this time. Although the invitation was tempting, the idea of returning required more than nostalgia. He declined, said it wasn't the right moment, and with that, the doors closed, at least for now. The Warriors' front office felt the blow. They knew that opportunities like that don't come twice easily. Time, in this game, is rarely generous. On the other side of the country, the seemingly promising scenario was falling apart. In Phoenix, the combination of star talents, terrifying on paper, turned out to be a dysfunctional mess on the court. Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal couldn't even lead the team to the play-in. A fiasco. The kind of downfall that forces everything to be rethought, including the presence of a superstar who, at 36, still plays at a high level, but can no longer change a franchise's destiny alone. The firing of head coach Mike Budenholzer was just the beginning. The real bombshell came shortly after. Durant would be placed on the market. Trade talks would begin in the summer. Reliable sources confirmed it. The noise began to echo once more in San Francisco. For Warriors fans, it rekindled a flame that had never truly gone out. After all, what Durant had done in the Bay Area couldn't be easily forgotten. 3 seasons, 2 championships, 2 Finals MVP awards, and averages that flirted with perfection in decisive moments. He wasn't just a piece on the board. He was the difference maker, the factor that separates good teams from dynasties. Now, in a later stage of his career, Durant still posts impressive numbers, over 26 points per game, with shooting accuracy that challenges even the strictest standards. Performance was never the issue. It's the context, the fit, the cost. That's exactly what a respected analyst proposed, an offer that would put everything on the line. Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, Moses Moody, Brandon Podziemski, and a 2027 first-round pick. A risky trade, yes, but one that could, in theory, restore the shine the franchise had seen between 2017 and 2019. The names involved are not insignificant. Kuminga, for example, is nearing a contract extension and has shown flashes of a brilliant future. But what if the future has already passed? What if the chance to win one more title lies exactly in what the Warriors already know? Durant, Curry, and Draymond have been at the top together. They know the way. The big question is, would they be willing to try again? It wouldn't just be a transaction. It would be a kind of emotional reconciliation, a pact with the past in the name of one last great leap. Yet this idea also brings shadows. There are memories of internal frictions, bruised egos, and a departure that, at the time, wasn't exactly friendly. The behind-the-scenes matters, especially in a locker room led by intense figures. Durant's return would mean reconfiguring roles, adjusting narratives, reopening wounds. Curry, with his conciliatory nature, could be the unifying link. But what about Draymond? The vocal warrior, the fiery leader who had already clashed with Durant both on microphones and behind closed doors. What would this new coexistence look like? Time heals, yes, but it doesn't always erase. Moreover, the cost in young talent and draft picks would leave the Warriors without a safety net. It would be an all-or-nothing move. And what if it doesn't work out? What if Durant gets injured? What if the magic doesn't return? But the truth is, for many, the risk is worth it, because the present doesn't wait. With each passing season, the veteran core nears its end. And Curry, though still spectacular, is not eternal. The same goes for Draymond. And for any hope of competing at the highest level, it might be necessary to risk everything. This is where the Warriors' dilemma becomes almost philosophical. Bet on nostalgia, trying to repeat the formula that once worked, or trust the unknown, the growth of the young players, the evolution of Kuminga, Moody, Podziemski, and the like. Neither choice is safe. Both carry real risks and lasting consequences. Summer is approaching, and with it, the moment of decision, the possibility of one final dance, a last act of glory for a generation that has already made history, or the beginning of a new page, still blank, waiting for new protagonists. The phone didn't stop ringing, not for a second. When the possibility of Durant cooled down, another name began to heat up behind the scenes of the franchise, a name that carries the weight of a rebuilding empire and the raw power of an athlete beyond the norm. Giannis Antetokounmpo, a name that needs no introduction, a name that, by itself, turns any plan into something grand or dangerous. It was hard to ignore what was happening in Milwaukee. The team, once a champion and feared, was now dragging itself along a path of uncertainty. The sudden departure of Damian Lillard left a huge void, not just a technical one, but a symbolic one. It was as if the very confidence in the project had evaporated. Giannis, watching it all, seemed distant, maybe tired, maybe in search of something more. Time was ticking. He would soon be 30, and as much as he was still in incredible shape, time, the same time that haunted Golden State, was starting to become a factor in his own journey. Winning was urgent. Competing was no longer enough, and for that reason, rumors of a formal trade request began to gain traction. That's when the Warriors, once again, became protagonists in the silent corridors of the league. If Durant represented a glorious past, Giannis symbolized reinvention. He had no history with the franchise, no scars, no memories. He was the new, the unknown, and for that very reason, an even bolder gamble. Because to make room for a player like him, the sacrifices would be deep. Kuminga, Moody, Hield, Podziemski, draft picks, all back on the table. But this time, not to revive something that once was, but to build something entirely new, an era where Curry's fluid game would meet the physical impact of Giannis, where Draymond's defensive intelligence would merge with the overwhelming presence of one of the greatest finishers in the modern history of the league. It was a tempting marriage, but not a simple one. The Warriors' front office knew it. Steve Kerr, a master of balance, was facing his greatest puzzle yet. Not just a technical one, but a human one. Because inserting Giannis into a team that still revolved around Curry, Green, and now Jimmy Butler, recently arrived and hungry for protagonism, would require more than tactical adjustments. It would demand patience, sacrifice, and mutual trust. Giannis would arrive as the centerpiece. There would be no doubt about that. His presence on the court would completely change the team's offensive and defensive dynamics. He's not just dominant, he forces the opponent to adapt, to fear him, and that, in theory, would give the Warriors something even Durant hadn't: total control over pace and space. But the price, once again, was youth. It was the future. It was identity. Because Kuminga wasn't just a developing player, he was the symbol of a new phase. The hope planted when the first signs of the dynasty's end began to emerge. He represented tomorrow, and letting him go would, in a way, be admitting that tomorrow is not now. From an emotional standpoint, the decision also grew heavy. Curry, always the consummate professional, had a bond with this young core. He watched them grow, guided them, embraced them, and as much as he wanted to win, no one wants it more than he does, there was, in his recent statements, a faith in the process, a belief that internal evolution, if respected, could bear fruit without having to tear everything down. It was in one of those interviews, a few days after the elimination to the Timberwolves, that he let something revealing slip. He said that if everyone had been healthy, that series would have been different. He spoke with conviction, with a calm that bordered on confidence. It was as if he were trying to protect something, or someone. And that stance naturally divided opinions. For some, it was a sign of leadership. For others, stubbornness. The front office, under pressure from an impatient market, saw in the coming months not just a window of opportunity, but also an ultimatum, because keeping the current core and betting on the growth of the young players would require time, and time, once again, was not on their side. Fans found themselves in a near-existential crossroads. Some cried out for Giannis as the new pillar, the new face of the franchise. Others, however, saw in that attempt a risk of erasing everything that had been carefully built since Durant's departure. The truth is, there was no right answer. Bringing in Giannis could mean championships, but it could also mean disintegration. Keeping the young players might ensure sustainability, but it might also seal a few more years of frustration and near misses. And in this atmosphere of tension and expectation, every move by the front office was watched under a microscope. Meetings grew longer, calls more frequent. The press began circulating theories, trade packages, speculations, as if we were already living in a preseason that hadn't even started. Milwaukee, for its part, remained silent. No statements, no hints. Just the shadow of a scheduled meeting which could, or not, define the future of one of the greatest players of his generation. In San Francisco, the mood was one of waiting, but an active wait, like the silence before a thunderclap. The Warriors stood at a historic crossroads. They looked at Durant with nostalgia, at Giannis with desire, and at the young players with uncertainty. The choice would not be merely tactical, it would be symbolic, and perhaps definitive, because at some point, every empire must decide whether to seek one more crown, even if it means selling half the kingdom, or to bet on a new king still in the making. The nights in San Francisco felt different. The city, so used to celebrating the victorious sounds from Chase Center, now pulsed with a different energy. It wasn't euphoria, it was anticipation, the kind of anticipation that slips through alleys, echoes on sports radio, and turns every bar conversation into a strategic debate. And amid all of it, a restless silence. It wasn't the silence of apathy. It was the silence before the storm. In the Warriors' front office, papers were spread across desks. Salary cap spreadsheets, trade simulations, projected minutes, long-term scenarios, all meticulously analyzed. Every player involved in a potential deal had been studied inside and out, physically, psychologically, statistically, emotionally. No piece was treated as just a number. Because here, more than ever, technical decisions collided with human stories. Joe Lacob, the franchise's owner, knew exactly what was at stake. He had lived both sides of the dream, the building and the glory. And now, like any leader at a crossroads, he had to decide what kind of legacy he wanted to leave. It had been easy to take risks when everything was just beginning. The hard part was knowing when to stop or when to change course. Meanwhile, Steve Kerr was spending more time than ever watching old footage. Not just of Giannis's games or the homegrown young talent, but of the golden years. He revisited finals, decisive quarters, moments that felt orchestrated by something greater than technique. Maybe he was searching for clues. Maybe he was just trying to remember how it felt when the team played its best version of basketball. But the truth was, even Kerr didn't have all the answers. Because basketball, like life, rarely offers guarantees. Everything was a gamble. Everything was a risk. And even the coldest, most analytical logic could crumble under a string of injuries, a fractured locker room, or simply a lack of rhythm. Draymond Green, for his part, kept a steady face. But inside, he felt the ground shift. He had always been more than a player. He was the emotional core of the roster, the thermometer, the enforcer. And the arrival of a star like Giannis wouldn't just redistribute on-court protagonism. It would also force Draymond to redraw his role. Could he do that? Maybe, but not without ruptures. Because every era demands sacrifice, and Draymond knew that better than anyone. Still, the idea of watching the team part ways with the young players he helped shape bothered him. He saw potential. He saw fire. And to someone like him, that wasn't a small thing. While the backstage boiled, the city waited. And the players? Well, the players were just as in the dark as the fans. Kuminga, despite his professional demeanor, had already been told his name was among the most mentioned in trade talks. He heard it, he read it, but avoided reacting. He knew it was part of the game. Still, it hurt, because he believed he'd found a home with the Warriors, a place to grow, to fail, to learn, and to win. Jimmy Butler, recently arrived, kept to himself. He observed everything with experienced eyes. He'd seen this movie before. He knew that in winning franchises there was little room for egos and ambition, and he, coming from a history of turbulent locker rooms, was determined to be part of something different. But to do that, he needed to understand what the plan actually was. Stephen Curry? He was the eye of the storm. Everything revolved around him. Every decision, in some way, involved him, even though he never demanded anything, always placing the team above himself. He was the figure holding the system together, and also the one carrying the heaviest burden. In recent weeks, Curry had spent more time than ever in meetings with the front office, not to weigh in on trades, but to listen. He wanted to know what was being considered, what the plans were for the coming years. He didn't make demands, but it was impossible not to see the fatigue in his eyes. Not physical fatigue, emotional. He knew the end was closer than ever. Not a tragic end, but the end of a cycle. And because of that, every decision now had to make sense. Every step, every sacrifice, every investment, all of it needed, at the very least, to have purpose. That was the feeling in the hallways, purpose. Because this wasn't just about winning. The Warriors had already won. This was about how to win, and more than that, about who would be there when victory came, or when it slipped through their fingers like it had last season. And then, as if it were the final chapter of a story carefully written over the years, the moment of decision came, not with fanfare, not with an official announcement, but with a phone call, brief, direct, final. The trade for Giannis would not happen, not because there was no interest, but because, after everything, the franchise decided there was still something too valuable to let go, the bridge between past and future. Kuminga would stay. Moody, too. Podziemski would get another shot. And above all, Curry would continue leading a group that, though marked by stumbles, still breathed the belief that the best chapter had yet to be written. The phone was hung up, and in that instant, in a quiet San Francisco office, a new season began, before any practice, before any game. Because sometimes, the hardest decisions aren't the ones made out of fear of losing, but the ones made out of faith that there's still a way to win. Your own way. For Kai Sotto, the journey to the NBA is underway, and every step he takes reflects a path built on persistence, discipline, and a forward-thinking vision. What he has been demonstrating in the B-League is not just raw talent being refined over time, but a real commitment to becoming a complete athlete. And this commitment is beginning to be recognized by one of the most watched franchises in the NBA, the Golden State Warriors. Kai's return to the court was more than just a simple reappearance in a game. It was a statement. Against Kyoto, he didn't just play, he dominated. With 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists, Kai showed that he is one step ahead, evolving technically, physically, and most importantly, mentally. Every move, every play executed with precision revealed not just a talented athlete, but someone who understands the game on a deeper level. The paint became his comfort zone, a territory where he commanded respect, not just for his physical presence, but for the intelligence with which he positioned himself, moved, and distributed the ball. When the pressure mounted, especially in the third quarter, Kai did not shy away. On the contrary, he sought the moment. In a play that should be remembered as one of the season's best, he faked out 2 defenders and, despite being fouled, successfully completed the play and even converted the free throw. Plays like that don't just change the course of a game, they shape the perception coaches and executives have of a player. They show that, even under the spotlight and tension, he doesn't falter. But Kai's performance goes beyond standout plays. He is about to break statistical barriers that few reach. He is just 76 points away from joining the select group of players who have scored 1,000 points in the B League. That alone would be noteworthy, but he has also surpassed the 500 rebound mark and is only 4 assists away from reaching 100 assists. This demonstrates just how multifaceted he is. He's not a player who limits himself to scoring or defending. He is a true facilitator on the court. His impact is visible not only in the box score, but in the fluidity with which his team plays when he's on the court. The way he connects his teammates, how his court vision allows for quick and efficient transitions, and how his presence intimidates opponents in the paint all show how much he elevates the collective level. Commentators and experts already see in him the type of athlete who could raise the competitive standard of the league, and comparisons to great players of the past don't come out of nowhere. They are a reflection of what he has been showing game after game. What is most interesting is that even with so much potential still to be explored, Sotto is already becoming a sought-after player by fans outside of Asia, and among them, the Golden State Warriors stand out. With a history of recognizing talent before it peaks, the San Francisco franchise seems to be eyeing more than just Kai's statistics. The team's playing style, based on fast movements and fluid offensive transitions, would benefit greatly from the presence of a dominant center, something the roster currently lacks. Kai is exactly the type of piece that could fill this gap. His ability to protect the rim, grab crucial rebounds, and finish efficiently around the basket are qualities that fit perfectly into a system that already has speed and precision but lacks defensive solidity in the paint. At the same time, his growing confidence in mid-range shooting would make him an additional offensive weapon, something rare for a center of his size. But what makes this potential signing even more attractive to the Warriors is Kai's psychological profile. He is a player who doesn't let pressure get to him. On the contrary, he seems to rise to the occasion when he is most needed. This is visible in his court demeanor and the decisions he makes in key moments. This mindset is exactly what separates average players from those who make history. That's why the Warriors fan base has already started an informal campaign on social media calling for his acquisition. They see in Kai not only a necessary reinforcement, but a figure who could develop into one of the pillars of the team's new generation. And with the franchise looking to restructure without sacrificing competitiveness, bringing in an emerging talent with high potential and relatively low cost is a strategic move that makes perfect sense. Meanwhile, Kai continues his journey in Japan, aware that every point, every rebound, and every assist brings him closer to a greater goal. He knows that it's not enough just to play well. He needs to maintain a consistency that makes him stand out among hundreds of other global talents. And he has been doing that masterfully. More than just a good player, Kai is an athlete who inspires. His impact transcends the court. This influence is also felt outside of the games. He is a charismatic figure who connects with his fans, particularly with the Filipino youth, who see him as a symbol that it is possible to dream big. From the start of his career, he has carried the responsibility of representing not only himself, but an entire nation passionate about basketball. And he does this with humility, awareness, and impressive maturity for his age. This humanized vision also shows in how he plays. He is not an athlete seeking individual spotlight. He commits to the team, values the collective, shares the ball, and takes on less visible but equally essential roles. Players like that are the ones who make a difference in environments like the NBA, where talent is abundant, but the collaborative mindset is a rare differentiator. In the Warriors, this would be appreciated from day one. This is a franchise that built its success on the ability to play as a unit, where every piece understands its role and commits to the collective plan. Kai would fit perfectly into this machine. He wouldn't just be another talent. He would be an extension of the team's philosophy in the paint. The expectation around his arrival in the NBA grows with every game. With every new record he sets in the B League, the image that his transition to the North American League is imminent becomes more solid. And when that moment comes, the team that bets on Kai won't just be acquiring a promising athlete. They'll be investing in a future leader, a player capable of influencing not just the score, but the culture of an entire team. His impact on the court, His collective mindset, his maturity as a professional, and his technical skill are elements that make him a rarity in today's basketball scene. If the Warriors are the first to recognize this, they could have not just the center they've been missing, but a new icon for the coming years of rebuilding and conquering. Sotto is no longer just a promise of Asian basketball. He is an increasingly solid reality, walking with firm steps toward the NBA. And the possibility of seeing him wearing the Golden State Warriors jersey with their passionate fan base, dynamic tactical system, and constant pursuit of excellence seems more and more aligned with what the future holds. So, did you enjoy the content? If so, leave a like to support, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any updates. We post new videos regularly, bringing the latest news and everything happening behind the scenes. Thanks so much for following along. See you in the next video.